everyone out there. If you've ever driven an exotic car or a supercar, you'll find out right away that visibility out of the back is very limited. Things have changed over the years and cars are now equipped with backup cameras. Because of this being a first-year car, it didn't have a backup camera option. Technology's caught up quite a bit since then, and I just recently picked up a really nice integrated rear view mirror that doubles as a rear camera. It also records video facing forward. And here is the rear view mirror that I have chosen. It's relatively new on the market. I think it's been out a couple of months. It's called an AutoVox V5 Pro. And unlike most of the rear view mirror cameras, this one has a bracket that attaches to the tab affixed to the windshield. This is to give an OEM look. It has a single wire that will go up into your headliner, and that will attach to another wire assembly that breaks out into wires that will connect to your power source. An optional GPS. This does come with a GPS module, and that will show telemetry. It'll show details such as your speed. I don't really remember what detail it'll show, but it does show your speed, and we'll include that with the recording. Forward-facing camera, and that records along with the rear camera. And the rear camera is relatively small. Very happy about that. There's the wiring. Didn't really intend for this to be an unboxing. I just wanted to show really quick what I'm going to be installing on the car. That's about it. It's a very simple, clean kit. And once installed, it should look like it came factory on the car. And it's kind of my goal. I could have went with any kind of really cheap mirror that straps onto the factory mirror, but what I really wanted was I wanted a rear view camera that I could leave on all the time. This has that option. If you don't want the backup lines, you simply turn it off, leave the camera on. Once you hit the ignition hot, turn the car on, the camera powers up, and then you have rear visibility. You have visibility out of the rear of the car. And it is a touchscreen as well. There's an access tab on the bottom for a USB. I can only assume that is for software updates. A spot here for a micro SD card. Supports up to 64 gigabytes. With the rear camera, I have a couple of ideas for mounting this. There's two spots that I'm considering. The rear of the car does have an area for the rear view camera option. I could drill and grind that out and mount that. I may go with that, or I might mount it up a little bit higher in the same vicinity. Here's the spot I decided to mount the camera. The kit included a nice flat bracket, and behind this point right here, I have a bolt that holds this rear cover on. I went with this route because it allows the camera to stick out a little bit more. I don't have to worry about any of this trim showing up in the video. And also, looking at this, to utilize this factory mount would have involved modifying it quite a bit. I'm not really ready to go that route. If I like how the camera functions, I may do that. The way I did it, it's completely reversible, and I'm not altering an OEM part. Right now I'm removing most of the interior, and this will give me access to the fuse panel and also a large grommet under this to feed the wire through. And not surprising, I did find another missing fastener right there. This was probably from a prior service that involved an airbag recall. The install wound up being a little more difficult than I had anticipated. This is the bracket that came stock in the AutoVox mirror. It will bolt right up to the factory tab that's on the windshield. Problem is going to cause the mirror to hang down too much and also eliminate the ability to reaffix the plastic cover that covers up the windshield rain sensor. Also, there's this nice little channel that goes from the dome light assembly. That would have been sitting there. The whole thing just would have looked absolutely nasty. So I took a chance, gutted the original mirror, took the factory bracket out, cut, trimmed, and was able to bolt it into the aftermarket mirror. Had to make a channel for the wiring. The wiring is going to go up. This is the part of the original bracket. That's the tab. You see it's held on with pressure. There's a little plunger here, spring-loaded plunger or a pin that holds it onto the tab. And that's the plastic housing. It's plastic housing right here. I drilled a hole to allow the wire to pass through. Once it's installed and everything's back on the car, it's going to look like it was factory with the car. You will see a slight wire exposure here, not much, because of how high it sits up into the headliner and how close to the windshield. You're not going to really see that wire. Also had to modify this trim ring. That's nothing more than a decorative cover. I could have installed the whole thing without it. As you can see, I had to trim numerous times. I made it too. That's not going to affect anything because of the way it locks in. Try to doctor it up a little bit with some flat black paint. It's not perfect, but you're not going to see this part. This is going to be hidden behind the black part of the windshield. Once it's mounted, I'm going to run the wire up through the headliner. It's going to run along here, and it's going to come down the B pillar, and then I will put the excess wiring back here along with the GPS module. Here's what it looks like with the factory mount installed. Yeah, that crack does look pretty bad, but you're not going to see it. It's high enough up on the mirror that you're never going to notice that with it installed in the car. This whole thing, once installed, it's tucked up in there pretty tight. There's not much of a gap between the dome light and this. It is at the perfect height relative to the original mirror. This one is a bit wider, so I did notice it's going to affect visibility looking forward. Not a whole lot. I definitely think being able to see everything behind the car through a wide angle lens is going to outweigh any disadvantage I might have from it being wider. Using the original mount, I definitely feel is the way to go, because it is going to tuck the mirror up into the factory location, whereas this mount would have dropped it quite a bit and it would have obstructed my forward visibility a little bit more. I'm almost finished with the install. So you have the mirror on there. Around the wire, I routed the wire along the headliner, across this seal, and then down this B pillar. And I bundled the wires up behind the fuse panel. There's a lot of wire with this kit. The wire that goes back to the rear camera, I ran it through that grommet. It comes out right here. I don't plan to use the reverse light trigger. What that does, that activates the grid lines. So I just electrical tape that up. One really good tip of advice, there is a connection up in the headliner. I recommend taping that. I didn't do that at first. When I was doing a quick mock-up and running the wires, I couldn't get the mirror to power up. Well, it turns out while I was running the wire, it disconnected up in the headliner. It took 2 days to figure that out, a lot of frustration, but I did get it sorted. In addition to that, I also noticed that the fused wire taps that came with the kit are micro. This car uses mini blade fuses, and the micros didn't work, so I just had to do a really crude lasso technique. Just strip the wire, lasso it around one of the posts of the fuses. I will purchase the correct fuse taps in a couple of days, but for the time being, this will work. So at the point I'm at now, I'm ready to start buttoning this whole thing up. Oh, one little quick note. I went in and replaced the bolts down there. There was one missing. I replaced them with 2 matching aluminum bolts. The install is complete. I picked up proper fuse taps from a local auto parts store. Now it's time to start the car up. It starts up just like that. And as you can see, I already have, by default, rear view. Sorry about the music. It's touchscreen, so a quick tap brings up a menu. This changes our view. This goes to the GPS mode. It'll show your heading and speed. There we have split screen. We can see what's behind us and in front of us. That's just simply the forward view. I don't plan to use that. The only time I see you really needing that is just to dial in your angle. The camera is adjustable to compensate for different angles of the mirror itself. I'm going to leave it on rear view. It starts to record as soon as it starts, and like most dash cameras, it'll record in small segments, and then once it hits the oldest, say the disk is full, it hits the oldest file, it'll override that one. The reason for that, with most dash cameras, you only really need the video that's critical. Say you're involved in a collision, something bad happens, or something of interest that you really want to know about. Went out for a nice test drive after installing the rear view mirror, and I had a lot of glare, and I'm not going to blame the mirror on that. I'm going to say it's more to do with this car. There's a lot of glass at the rear of this car, so you have a dual pane piece of glass right here, and then also the glass covering the engine. In addition to all of that, you have really shiny carbon fiber, so on a sunny day like today, midday, there is light being bounced all over the place that bleeds off into the cab of the car. What I did find was just a minor adjustment, tilting the mirror down, completely got rid of all that glare. So I'm noticing with this, it's like I need to either decide if I want it on full time, which was the initial intention with the mirror, or set it where it times out. There is a feature on here you can set for the screen to turn off after 1 minute or 3 minutes. But since the intention was to have a full-time rear camera mirror, I went ahead and just tilted it a little bit. And I'm talking only maybe a degree or two. I got rid of all that glare that I'm seeing. But for the most part, I really like this product. It's very well made. The screen itself looks and feels and acts like a smartphone. So that concludes this video. Thank you everyone out there for watching.